I grew up here, yep, and been here. I've spent, my childhood here, and then when I was 18, I moved out to LA. But actually, I started spending summers in LA when I was younger, like when I was 13, and I'd kind of get internships at various places, all through basically junior high and high school.
So you were interning when you were 13?
Yeah.
So you're a real go-getter.
My brother already lived in LA, and I would go out there and just, get it was much more fun than hanging out at home and like doing dumb shit with my friends. Like I would go, I worked at, some of the internships were not the most amazing jobs. Like I was like shrink packing skateboards.
For, a 13-year-old, I guess that's technically child labor at that point, but, it's not a bad gig for a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
No, you were like in and around skateboard culture, so that's
exactly.
something.
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. It was great, actually. I loved it. I loved spending the summers out there. It was just me and my brother, and like by the time I was like 15, he had this like $600 car that he gave me, and I didn't have a license, but I still was like cruising around LA in this $600 Ford, fucking around.
I don't know if anybody really knows what they're going to do at 13, but did you have like some idea of the direction you were headed in?
I was making a bunch of short films then, and I DJ'd. I was like already DJing then, but I never really even thought about it too much, Like music was something that was always part of my life, even since I was a little kid. Like I always played a bunch of instruments and sang, but it never even crossed my mind like, hey, I'm going to be a professional musician or anything like that. I was just kind of fucking around and not even thinking about it. I really didn't think about it till I was like probably 18.
Just as far as like those kind of being like pipe dreams?
Yeah, it's weird. A lot of people, they like had this vision that they want to do something, and for me, I didn't have that. I just did all these things for fun. And then it wasn't until I was like 18 and I was like, wait, music is something that people actually do for a living. And that was a big epiphany for me. It's weird to me that it didn't even cross my mind, but it just never did. But maybe that was kind of a good thing because I was able to approach all of it with just a joy. There was no like, this is for my future. It was just maybe, and I probably might not have been able to enjoy it as much, like you see kids that are super driven when they're young and it's easy to burn out, or your approach to what you're doing becomes more about being the best rather than just fucking around and enjoying it and having fun and coming from a place of play, which is what I try and always do with everything if I can.
Does that significantly change the math of making something though when you start doing it professionally?
Hopefully not. I don't think so. It depends on what you're doing. Like I said, I try and approach as much as I can in my life from a place of play, whether, anything, even if it's just hanging out or whatever I'm doing, like going to the bank, anything. Like I want to make it playful. I want to see the world as a playground as much as I can.
How do you make going to the bank playful?
I don't know. I mean, like, well, one thing is like
a very specific example.
It's like, well, it's for instance skateboarding, like that's, or snowboarding or anything like those type of sports. It's like it's a way it transforms the world into like a playground. You see a street rather than a place that you're walking to get to from point A to point B. It's like, oh wait, this is a playground. This street right here is something to play with. And it was funny. I went to the ER the other day. And
this is not the beginning of a funny story.
I was with some friends. Yeah. We went to see a movie screening. My one friend, he got a spider bite and he was really scared. And so me and my girlfriend brought him to the ER, and we were hanging out. And the ER is not the most lighthearted, fun place, but this is just an example of trying to make everything a game or be playful with anything. We were just sitting there and we just made up stories for like every single person in the ER, and it was like I ended up having like the funnest night ever just hanging out in the ER.
You're certainly at a point now where I assume that you have some creative freedom with most of what you do, but do you feel like you were afforded that early on when you first kind of really started doing this in earnest?
I mean, it depends. Like, like with my company with Squeaky Clean, and if we're doing some stuff that's with brands, sometimes that stuff becomes really about meeting someone else's needs and making sure they're getting what they need. And even as far as like doing music for Spike or for other directors, it depends on the project. I try and infuse as much play and joy into it as I can. That's just personally me. Some people like creating from a place of pain and stuff. I have a good friend that is really like, she writes all of her music. It's Soko, the artist Soko. She writes all her music from all this pain she has, and it's her way of kind of exercising it. But for me, I find I'm better coming from a place of joy. But a lot of this stuff now, like I just did this series with Impossible Foods and Wu-Tang Clan, and that was just pure fun. Even in the edit at lunch, everything was a game. And we approached everything in the way we shot it, in the way we were editing it. Everything was always up for play.
How does that come to fruition? I assume they approach you, or they approach the Wu-Tang Clan first? You approach the Wu-Tang Clan? RZA talked to GZA?
Sasha Markova is a good friend of mine. She's kind of head of the kind of in-house creative team at Impossible, and they wanted to do something with space originally, and it was kind of to announce Impossible Burgers now being at White Castle. Yeah. And originally they were kind of thinking about having some other people. They wanted to do something with space, and they were thinking about having some other kind of well-known people in this series, and maybe having Ghost in the series as like the robot computer. And they approached me because I'm like a space fanatic. I've been like my whole career. Like I had my old project NASA, and I just love space. It's been since I was a little kid. I love space, and Sasha knows this about me. And so when they approached me, I was like, I wasn't crazy about the other people they were talking to. Not that I have a problem with them, but like I'm a huge Wu-Tang fan. Like I bought Enter the 36 Chambers the day it came out. My cat's named Wu-Tang. And so we started talking about it, and I was like, let's just get Wu-Tang. Like, Wu-Tang is the cool, like, Wu-Tang in space flying around talking about the nature of the universe and the meaning of life. Like, that's awesome. Yeah. And Sasha was into the idea and got everybody on board, both at White Castle and Impossible, and kind of because she was coming from this pure place of just wanting to make something great. And actually, everybody on board just like, we don't care too much about doing something producty. We just want to make something awesome. We want to create a cultural thing rather than an advertising thing more than anything.
I'm sure the word viral probably got bounced around a little bit in the process.
For sure. So I reached out because I've worked with a bunch of the Wu-Tang people, and Riz is my friend. At this point, we've worked together a bunch, and I kind of reached out to them and to see if they were interested, and kind of told them that it was going to be cool and we weren't going to make them look goofy, and it wasn't going to feel really corporate. It was really, we were just making something awesome, and they got it, like. I had worked with Riz, I had worked with Ghost, so there was a level of trust there, and I knew GZA. I had met him like at a festival before, so there was this kind of level of trust there already. And then they're also like, especially RZA, they're movie fanatic, and they even helped a lot with the thinking around it. Like RZA was putting me on to like, because I was like, when I was doing the research for it, I was watching a lot of old Star Trek, but I was also digging through a bunch of Godzilla movies, and he was putting me, he's like, oh, you gotta watch Destroy All Monsters, that has all of the Godzilla kaiju in it, and he was putting me onto a bunch of stuff like that, and they really were part of the creative process too. We included them, we wanted them to. I mean, they have such a deep philosophy and like kind of mythology around them, and there's so much thinking that's gone into that already. So I, being a Wu-Tang fanatic, was already kind of feeding off that, but getting their input into it and their thinking around it. Even like, our spaceship, we couldn't figure out the name, so we brought on Dan Curry, who's this great writer. He writes for the Eric Andre show, and he's just awesome. And me, Sasha, and Dan were trying to figure out like, what the hell is the name of this spaceship? We knew we wanted to look like the Wu logo, and then we're hanging out with the guys, and we asked him, and Jizz was like, it's the WooFO. Like, I was like, oh yeah, and Jizz was just like, of course, the WooFO.
The creative process is just basically like sitting around and shooting the shit for a while?
Yeah, I mean, it was really like, what is this thing? It's I guess it's probably how you write. I don't know, I've never written like a TV show before, so I'd imagine it's somewhat how most people write a TV show, although I don't really know. Yeah, we just kind of banged around a bunch of ideas. We knew we wanted to do that they're, orbiting Earth, because we wanted to keep the show kind of Earth-centric, and even though they're in space, they're still looking back on Earth with, like, love, and they're going away from Earth to get perspective, but it's all about earthly love.
It sounds like the sort of thing that would come out of just, like a high conversation, but you're in a position, like, just a bunch of dudes sitting around saying, like, let's put the Wu-Tang in space, but, like, you've made this career for yourself that you're able to be in a position where you can, like, take this totally crazy thing and make it happen.
I guess so, yeah. I don't know. I'm lucky enough to have some friends that want to make awesome shit and are at places that can do it sometimes and want to involve me. So that's kind of what we did on this one.
This is probably something that wouldn't have happened without corporate sponsorship. I mean, that's almost kind of the irony here. This idea probably wouldn't have come to fruition if there weren't these companies behind it.
Yeah, it's true. And the other crazy thing is, it totally wouldn't have happened without the brands. But now there's some conversations happening about, like, maybe this actually is a TV show or a show, is a series outside of the brands.
Did it feel like you were doing like a pilot potentially?
I mean, we kind of thought, like, I wonder if this actually is going to become a show, but we weren't approaching it like that. We just approached it like, let's make this as awesome as possible. And let's just make something great. I think it was like, after the first shoot day, we were kind of like, Sasha and I and Dan were like, this actually feels like it's like, might have a life outside of this 4-episode series. And then the kind of response has been so overwhelming in like online. People are just like, I need more. I want more of this. I want this. This has to be a show. And then we're like, all right, we got to see if this actually this thing is gonna be that or not. And so we're kind of still figuring that out now. I mean, I'm really happy with it as kind of this standalone thing, and it's been so fun. It was so fun making it. It's been so fun feeling the response and how psyched people are on it. And we've been doing some screenings around it as well. Where we did a screening at the Vortex Dome in LA where we just screened all 4 episodes, one after another. And then like did a DJ party afterwards, and it's just been fun being in the room and feeling like the screening was super rowdy. People were cheering, and we want to do more of those as well around it.
These are ostensibly commercials, right? I mean, they are doing ads for the company and the product. I'm having sort of trouble imagining like 10 years ago the Wu-Tang agreeing to do what is essentially a commercial for White Castle.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely think there was a stigma around doing anything with brands, you know. Especially in the 90s, like it was like super stigmatized.
Selling out, and
yeah.
You kind of come from a punk background, so you've been around. I mean, like skateboard culture, right? Like selling out, poser, like those are all big buzzwords.
Yeah. And now it's kind of, yeah, I think I mean, especially like the Wu-Tang guys, we all believed we believe in Impossible. We love it. The Wu-Tang guys are almost all vegetarians, and I love Impossible. I'm not a vegetarian, but like I love Impossible, and I'd love to not. I'd be really happy if we didn't eat any animals, and because I love animals and because I want to save our planet. You know, it's getting pretty fucked up, and certainly, you know, agricultural, especially like meat production and cow production, is definitely not good for the planet.
Yeah, there was something like crazy, like 70% of CO2 or something comes out of cows' asses.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane, and just all the resources that go into it as well. So it's something that I think everybody on board believes in a lot and wants to help make it a thing. And if a brand wants to help me personally, I could say for myself, if a brand wants to help, I want to make awesome shit. And that's like my number one goal is just to make awesome shit. And that's what I want to do with my time. And if it can make the world a better place, that's like a million times better. Even if it's by helping Impossible Foods a little bit, get the planet less dependent on meat production, maybe we're making the world a better place a little bit. And if a brand wants to pay for something like that and help us do that, and know that just by them kind of being associated with, you know, somebody like the Wu-Tang Clan, and be associated with just a cultural series, something that's cultural and people just enjoy as far as watching it, then, you know, I'm all for it.
How much vetting are you doing of these brands? I mean, you know, I assume like you're not going to pick a client that you think is doing harm or is like objectively evil.
Yeah.
But is it a case where you feel like, you know, you need to necessarily like believe in or use or trust the brands or products if you're going to spend your time working with them?
Yeah, we try and, you know, it depends on what the project is, you know, like there's brands that we do stuff with, like as far as my company Squeaky Clean goes, we'll do stuff with brands that you know, we're not vetting super deeply, but, you know, as far as, you know, for me, when I'm doing my personal projects or something that's much more personal to me, something that I'm investing a bunch of time in, months of my time in and directing, or it's, you know, it's my song that has my name on it, I certainly will make sure that it's a company that I believe in and that is not doing harm to our planet or to people.
How do you make the transition? I mean, so you know, you start creating music professionally. How do you sort of end in the advertising space? You have your own production company, and you're spending a significant portion of time working on these.
Totally. It's just kind of it kind of just happened organically. I started by doing music for skate films. There was a couple films early on called Yeah Right and Pretty Sweet that were really popular skate films. And from those kind of started doing some music for commercials. And then really early on, like one of the first commercials ended up winning a bunch of awards. And then the company my Squeaky Clean just kind of grew naturally out of just doing them. and there was never like a business plan. It was more like my friends were coming and hanging out and making music, and sometimes it was for records and sometimes it was for commercials, and then before I knew it, there was like a company. I was in this tiny house in Hollywood. It was a tiny 4-room house called Crack Alley Studios. Mm-hmm. Literally in a crack alley, there was like people smoking crack and crazy shit going on outside, and all of a sudden there was like this company in there, and it was, I was living in this like closet in this house, and there was 10, 15 people there every day, packed into this tiny house filled with music equipment, and it just kind of happened without really much of a plan, or it was very organic in the way it grew.
I mean, was it something that was difficult to reconcile at first when you were like, creating music and you want it to be like a pure form of expression, but then you ended up working with these corporations?
I didn't really have an issue with it. Yeah. I've always had like, okay, like right now, for instance, I'm releasing, I just did this thing with Wu-Tang. Personally, this doesn't feel like a brand. Like, I don't feel like I was like making something for a brand. No matter what I've been doing, I always am working on my art kind of stuff that has nothing to do with branding, or like right now I'm releasing a song every month, and I have this other kind of interactive experience thing I'm doing called Sensorium that is like this interactive experience that we do every month along with the song release, and so there's always projects I'm doing. I feel like if I just was doing branded stuff, I might start to stagnate. So having some sort of form of just purely artistic expression and getting my art out there that's not brand related has always been important to me, and it's always been important to. I also think to the culture of my company, even though my company does a lot of stuff with brands. Everybody at the company is all artists in their own right, or music producers, DJs. Everybody there is like got their own projects going on, and I think maybe that's why those people have been attracted to the company as well, is because they know that it's a cultural place rather than strictly kind of branding and corporate work. And I personally am really comfortable with doing the branding work, but I love doing my artistic stuff as well. I like doing both of them. It kind of fulfills different itches for me.
Has the internet and has sort of the idea of things going viral, do you think that's kind of liberated people working on the creative side of advertising, that maybe brands aren't giving push back in the same way that they would have like 5, 10, 15 years ago?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. That's interesting you say that about if it's that things are going viral, or things going viral has enabled that. But for whatever reason, there seems to be a new kind of paradigm, and I think that the Wu-Tang thing kind of struck a chord in that new paradigm of like brands more and more knowing, hey, if we pair with creative people and let them do their thing and just make something great, it's going to reflect really well on our brand, and people are going to like us and care about us. I mean, and I think, Impossible was a great brand to do that, because I think there is like a real, they're like a brand with a fan base, like people love Impossible.
But I think there's also, sort of a tacit understanding that it's not going to go viral if it's just a straight commercial for something. It's like, it's going to get out there if it's just this like super bizarre thing.
It's interesting you say that. The first thing we did, I don't know if you saw this, but the first thing we released with Wu-Tang is we just put out this teaser video. Yeah, and RZA, it's basically just RZA. It's like the RZA 9000, and RZA's making this announcement. I am no longer the RZA. I am now the RZA 9000. I've uploaded my consciousness, and now I am all-knowing. I'm omniscient. If you want your questions, and I've gone to space. If you want your questions answered by me or the Wu-Tang Clan, call this number. And that's how all the questions happened, and people called, and we created a voicemail, like old school voicemail. People called up and asked all these amazing questions. Like there was literally like thousands of messages, people from like, hey, should I have a baby with my girlfriend, to like, what is the meaning of life? And so we purposely were like, we're not going to have any branding on this, and we're just going to put this out there And there was so much Wu-Tang love that we discovered, and like listening to these voicemail messages were amazing. But we were like, it's exactly what you said. We knew if we made this a branded thing, it was like people were gonna feel differently about it, and so we just floated it out there as this thing, like, and people were like, is RZA, he's doing it? He might be doing an AI project or something. We don't know,
like,
but you
like
can
Alexa, but
oh, that would be awesome, man. But anyway, yeah. So that was kind of the concept there, and yeah, it's true. Because it wasn't branded, it probably spread in a much bigger way. And I also agree, just something having real authenticity as far as creative people just doing something they want to do. That's gonna be the thing that does spread virally much more than anything that's out there to sell. As soon as something feels like you're being sold to, you kind of compartmentalize it into this other category of like, there's just like a defense that comes up, and you kind of half block it. You're not as receptive.
I get the feeling that most of your career over the years has been very serendipitous. I mean, like, you met CeeLo Green in a shoe store in Japan?
Yeah. Yep. It was awesome. I mean, it's true. I did. Yeah, it's good how things happen. Like, sometimes things happen.
I mean,
you
were shoe shopping, and you're like, here's the...
Well, I was right in the middle of making the NASA album, and the NASA album, a lot of it came together like that. I'd be like, I really want to get so-and-so on this song. And CeeLo was on my list. Like, I was like, I really want to work with CeeLo. And
it's like the kind of thing you expect, like, when you're in L.A., right? You're going to run into these people, but, like, Japan...
And there was CeeLo, and I was already wanting to work with him.
You feel like you manifested this into the universe, maybe a little bit?
Maybe. Sometimes I do feel like like if I'm really focused on something, I do have powerful manifestation powers. But yeah, and there he was, and I started talking to him, but it still took like several years before we got into the studio. It took a lot of following him around. I was up on I went on tour with the Chili Peppers, and I was doing a song with Frashante when Frashante was still in the Chili Peppers, and they were touring with Gnarls Barkley at the time, and so I went out to do a song with both CeeLo and Frashante. CeeLo didn't come to the studio that night, so then I was like kept missing him in various cities for another year and a half or something, and then finally he came to the studio like 2 or 3 years later. It was like, CeeLo wants to come by in 20 minutes. Are you at the studio? And then it ended up happening. So it was very serendipitous meeting him, and then there was like a ton of follow-up before we actually ended up getting to record.
So it's serendipitous, but also, like, it sounds like you have to, in order for the project to come together the way you want it to, you have to be incredibly patient.
Yeah. I think, I'd say so.
Is that part of just like having a lot of different projects going on at the same time, the ability to put something on the back burner for a while?
I guess so, yeah, and especially with the way I think I put, especially music projects together, I'm working on a ton of stuff simultaneously, and even songs I'm writing, there's like, this song's done, but it needs one more. It needs the chorus is done, but it needs the verses, and who'd be the right people for that, and everybody's so busy in music, and everybody's flying all over the place, and then it just seems to sometimes come together when you're in the right place at the right time, and some artist that you've been wanting to work with happens to be in Tokyo when you are, and then you get to make it happen.
How important, though, is it to actually like do these things in person? I mean, I feel like more and more people are doing a lot of this remotely.
Yeah, personally, I feel like it's really important to be in the room together, because I feel like that's one of the issues with like kind of this, how everybody's sending stuff around and everybody's collaborating, and there's these massive, when NASA came out, it wasn't like a thing. There was a couple people that had done big collaborative records like that. Now all the records are have tons of features, and I feel like the one thing that happens is that there's a lack of cohesion to songs and albums. That the album is a art form that has transformed a lot, and there's different a lot of times there's a different producer on every song and different features, and everything has been sent around, and people aren't in the same room, and I feel like music is it's a communal art form, and it's always been done together with people in a room playing music together. And when you have one idea, a song usually comes from an idea or a feeling, and keeping everybody. Sometimes it happens when it comes together kind of in in pieces, people can fortuitously and serendipitously catch that same feeling and keep it feeling as a cohesive song, but oftentimes being in the room and talking about it, and even if it's not everybody in the room, but there's one person, say the producer, that's talking about the feeling and always bringing it back to the idea and the feeling is really important. And I feel like you can feel it with records now, and especially with albums. The cohesion and the concept of an album isn't always as kind of isn't as complete as maybe it used to be, and it's different now. Not that it's worse, but it's just a different thing. I love albums, and I love conceptual albums and concept albums, and that's kind of just how I like to work.
I talk to a lot of bands, and there's always this kind of consensus that as much as everybody wants it to be a fully democratic process, it's got to be kind of dictatorial. There really has to be one person in charge, one person really piloting the ship. Is that your role as producer?
I think so. It depends.
Yeah.
If it's my record, certainly. There's certain artists I've worked with where that's needed. I think as a producer, similar to as being a director, I think you kind of know where you need to be strong and where you need to give somebody room to just do their thing and lead. I work with Karen O a lot. Mm-hmm. Karen has a vision. She always has a vision, and I know if I'm working with Karen, it's not like I'm going to just shut up and not add anything. Yeah. But when Karen has a vision, has an idea, always follow that idea because it's always fucking right. When she's sure, it's 100% Karen's way, and I know I trust her so much. I trust her instinct so much. So there's other artists that I work with where I know that they need me to be the driver, the pilot. And I love working like that too.
I wonder how much of this sort of comes out of growing up with a brother who is also creative and working on projects with him, if that was the genesis of this desire to really very actively collaborate with other people.
I think that's definitely part of it, and I think I like people. I like being around people, and certainly that helped. Working with Spike helped me. That he's so smart and always has such a vision that I learned a lot about kind of following someone's vision from that and serving a vision. But as far as loving to work collaboratively, it's just part of I think who I am. It's I've always liked working in teams and making it's just more fun to me being in a room with somebody and then being alone. And being alone is fun too, but for certain parts of projects, I like writing alone, but in general, I want to spend the majority of my time with people that I like and love, having fun with them.
When you come to something though with a very distinct vision of what you want to do, especially when it's a track that you're putting down, is it difficult to give up control?
Sometimes, yeah. But I think, for sure, of course, and I'm a control freak, but I don't know. I like to think that I know when it's appropriate to do that, and I'm able to let go. I think I've also worked with plenty of artists that have this need to control everything, and I see it being destructive. I see it fucking up the project because control is more important to them than greatness.
You can tell when an artist gets to a point in their career when they're just surrounded by yes men.
Yes,
that's when things start to get repetitive and really, really terrible.
Yeah, and people. I think even as a person, you can see when people start getting surrounded by yes men, and their character starts to change too, and it's a drag.
I mean, it seems like you're kind of going out of your way to put your name out there more than before, or at least do these projects under your own name.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a trillion different monikers always and different projects, and whether it was NASA or my weird self-indulgent side project Maximum Headroom, Squeaky Clean, there was a ton of different names always, and I think that probably came from on one hand kind of being shy and not really wanting to be the person, and being always able kind of having the ability to be anonymous, and I like that, and I still like that, to be honest.
You still consider yourself to be a shy person?
Yeah, I can be shy.
Yeah,
I can be shy. Yeah, it depends. It depends how I'm feeling and what the setting is and who I'm around.
It's hard to reconcile those two parts of your personality, the shy part and the part that can be in a room and tell the RZA what to do.
Yeah. I think I learned how to do
Yeah.
that. At first, it was really hard. NASA was kind of like almost like a school for learning how to be able to give guidance to my heroes. It was pretty much like the best. It was like many heroes packed in like a couple years that I was in the studio with, and I was like, in my mid-20s and kind of learning how to. It was a crash course on that.
How did that come together so quickly and so like early in your career?
Just patience and persistence, really. The record took a long time.
Yeah.
It took probably 5 years all in all, but the last 2 years was the majority of the stuff. And yeah, it was just patience and gaining momentum. It took a long time before we got anybody. But then one of the first, we got David Byrne, and then it was a lot easier to get other people because they're like, David Byrne's on this? Rad. And then another early one was we got the last Old Dirty Bastard recording, and we did a song with Karen. Yeah. It was Karen and ODB's last song. And then when we had those two songs and people heard that, it was easier to kind of get people interested.
Of all the people to like have involved early on, how does David Byrne get on board?
David Byrne, I actually I'm friends with his niece. So I just like with NASA, it was just like, how the hell am I going to get in touch with these people? I'll do anything it takes. And I just love David Byrne. I'm such a big fan of his. And so we sent him the track, and he loves Brazilian music, and it was very Brazilian influenced. And he just wrote back immediately. Sent him an email. It was forwarded like 10 minutes later or something. My friend, his niece, wrote me back and said, David's interested. Here's his email.
I wonder how much of these things not getting off the ground is just people like being afraid to ask the question and like ask somebody to work with them.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the thing. Like,
it's self-defeating, right?
Yeah, and I think artists, we want to make awesome shit, and somebody sends us something, regardless whether we know them or not. If we love it, or if we're open-minded people and we love it, we're going to do it. And I really discovered that on the NASA record. It's like I was like, wow, if I just reach out to Tom Waits and he hears something that he likes, he's gonna be into it and collaborate.
How strictly structured are your days? Like, when you're really actively like working on a project, is music something that you're basically thinking about 24/7?
Music and filmmaking. Yeah, pretty much. It's pretty hard for me to switch off.
Yeah, and
I pretty much work all the time, every day.
Is that a good thing?
I like it.
Yeah.
I think when I slow down, it's a lot harder for me than when I'm really busy. Like, being really consumed with a project or projects is my happiest state of being.
How do you avoid getting burnt out?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still working on that.
You're out here now for, I guess, like a week or so. Are you actually working on music while you're out here?
I have a project I'm doing with this children's chorus that I can't talk about too much, but that's what I'm working on while I'm out here. And just a bunch of meetings and stuff. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing here. And then it looks like we're going to be recording in London next week.
Does it change the process when you have your name on it? I mean, versus like, working under a pseudonym or a collective or something like that, when the first thing people see is you. It's almost like going from being in a band to being a solo artist. You can't really blame anyone else if it's bad.
Yeah. I don't think it changes the process except in that, like, for instance, these other projects I had, like, when I used to use the moniker Squeaky Clean, it was broader, but like with NASA, it was always kind of about space. There was some space element. It was about the kind of duality, and it was about community, and so I stayed within those those kind of frame lines, and I think. And then with Maximum Headroom, it's about technology and love and loneliness and connection. And then with Sam Spiegel stuff, now that I'm doing the Sam Spiegel stuff, it's interesting because I'm like, whoa, like I'm so used to having these guidelines, and now this is just me, and I can just do anything I want.
Constraints can be useful when it comes to making something creative, right?
Yeah.
The tyranny of the blank page.
Yeah, that's I like that expression. Yeah, it is. It's a little. Sometimes it's a little daunting. I'm like, wow, okay, I can write a song about anything. I guess with the Sam Spiegel stuff, in general, it feels more personal. It's more about like just my emotions than that, while as the other stuff was more conceptual.
Do you feel like you've had to kind of put the video stuff on the back burner while you focused on music?
No, I mean, all the music I'm releasing right now, it's music that I've been working on for. I basically didn't release very much music for a while. Like, there was a couple years that I was very quiet on the music front. So these songs are songs that I've made over the past few years, and I'm putting a collection of songs out now about once a month. And these are all songs that have been made from the last, 6 months to the last, 4 or 5 years even, some of them. And so ultimately they'll all come out as a package album called Random Shit from the Internet Era. But I'm putting one out a month, and it's really, this is just this almost feels like I'm clearing my cleansing all my musical stuff and just get it out there, and it's all songs that I really love and have meant a lot to me. And
how do you know what to prioritize and focus on when you've got so many things going at the same time?
That's something I'm trying to learn, actually, because I have a million things I'm working on, and it drives me nuts. The burnout thing, it's real, at one point, while we were filming, it was the day before 2 days before we were shooting Wu-Tang, we released a song, and the day before we were shooting Wu-Tang, we did a sensorium experience, and I felt like I was about to explode. And so I'm trying to figure out exactly how to prioritize, and really what it is I have the best manager, this guy Blade, and it's just constantly talking and reprioritizing, and Blade and I just talk all the time, and he's kind of more of a partner than anything. So just talking and reprioritizing very frequently and seeing what feels right and what's the most important thing, and also having a plan. We have a 5-year plan, so it's we kind of know what's what, but it changes. Stuff comes up that's exciting and important, but and that's where the reprioritizing happens. But having this kind of long-term plan has been really awesome.
What do things look like 5 years out from now for you?
Maybe I'm not ready to talk about all this stuff, but there's a lot of stuff on the film front and on the music front coming, and it's all kind of interconnected. And also on the experience front coming. It's all kind of interconnected.
There you go. That was director and producer Sam Spiegel. Thanks to him. Thanks to Joe for helping set up that conversation. Sam's most recent project we talked about a bit on there is the Wu-Tang in Space Eating Impossible Sliders. You can find that over on YouTube along with his various musical projects. Thanks so much to him for taking the time to do that. Thanks to you guys, as always, for listening to the program. If you like this show, there are so many ways to support us. You can rate and review us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you happen to get your podcasts. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Tumblr. That's RiYLcast.tumblr.com. If you have any feedback, it's RiYLcast@gmail.com. And that's about it for now. So stick around, because we are going to be back in the not too distant future with another episode of RiYL.